Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Minecraft Disney World. Today, we're looking at one of my favorite rides. It's in Epcot, it's iconic, you can't miss it. It's Spaceship Earth. This is what is popularly known as the giant golf ball, or the giant metal sphere, or whatever you want to call it. It's Spaceship Earth. It's the 18-story Geodesic Sphere that acts as the icon of Epcot and also as the first ride that you actually encounter when you walk into the park. So it is in fact a ride, and the ride does in fact go within that sphere. It is a slow-moving Omni-Mover ride, and I think it actually serves as the best introduction to Epcot because it sort of sums up exactly what the theme of Future World was supposed to be. Now, this Geodesic Sphere is actually two structural domes. It's an engineering marvel, really. The way it works is there are three sets of two legs that the sphere sits on, and what those legs do actually is they support a platform within the sphere, and on top of that platform is the top half of the dome, and attached to the bottom of that platform is the bottom half of the dome, and they connected make this complete sphere. Now, what's really cool about it is they've really thought about everything. Of course, you have to think about height and weight and things like wind resistance, but if you ever go there in the summer, or I guess really any time, you'll probably be there while it rains. And if you notice, water never drips off the side of Spaceship Earth. And the reason for that is that there are 1-inch gaps between all of the triangles that make up the sphere. And they act as a gutter system that actually collects all of the water while it rains and funnels it into the World Showcase Lagoon. So you'll never get wet by standing underneath the Spaceship Earth sphere. It was actually designed with the help of Ray Bradbury, who's the science fiction writer, Fahrenheit 451, very famous author. And he actually worked on the original storyline for the ride. It was originally sponsored by Bell, who is a telecommunications company. That was from 82 to 84, which is when Eisner took over, which is unrelated. And then Bell was, of course, forced to split into smaller companies due to antitrust reasons. And so AT&T, which was the parent company of Bell and which had become its own company, became the sponsor from 84 to 2004. So pretty long sponsorship there. And then in 2005, the German company Siemens actually took over. And it's sort of cool to see that you had this telephone company essentially sponsoring it for so long, because what you saw in early Disney, and especially in Disneyland when Walt was involved, is the special picking of sponsors that related to the theme of the ride, because at the end of the day, you wanted to essentially sell the brand name to the people who are on the ride, and it only makes sense that the theme of the ride matches up with the sponsor. So that was a perfect fit. Now, there have been a lot of changes to this ride over time. When it actually first opened, it was narrated by this actor named Lawrence Dobkin. He narrated it from 1982 to 1986. He was an actor in radio, he was a screenwriter. I've never actually heard it personally, his narration. The more popular ones were the two that followed. In 1986, it was replaced by a narration by Walter Cronkite, who was a very famous news anchorman. And he was the narrator up until 1994. In 94, he was again replaced by Jeremy Irons, who was an actor that most people would probably know best as the voice of Scar from The Lion King. And then in 2007, they did the ride again, essentially, and they replaced the narration with Dame Judi Dench, who is an actress you might know from all of the James Bond films. Everyone's got their favorites. People will swear by Cronkite, people will swear by Irons, and people like Judi Dench. Personally, I love the Jeremy Irons version. I think it really boils down to which one you grew up with, although I will admit that ultimately the best narrator to have for it would have been Walter Cronkite, because I think that most symbolizes the theme of the ride. Walter Cronkite was this famous personality who delivered the news in America, and he was supposed to be one of the most trusted people in America when it came to news sources. And I think to have somebody who is such an iconic role in communication in the modern era narrating this ride about the history of communication is just the perfect fit. Now, beyond the changes of the voiceover, there were of course changes in the ride itself. They added scenes and changed scenes to sort of keep it updated. For instance, some point in the late 80s or early 90s, I don't really remember, they added scenes in which towards the end, when they're sort of speculating on the future of communications, you see children in Asia communicating through video over the internet with people in America. Now that completely came true, which is great, because you always see these rides that sort of predict the future, and they're always these grand ideas of flying cars and living in space, and they're things that we have yet to see come to reality. But the idea of just communicating instantly across the globe in clear video image, it's something that's come true. Some of the changes, though, were also on the outside. For instance, in the year 2000, they added this Mickey's wand on the side of it with the number 2000. It was to celebrate the millennium. So when they finished celebrating the millennium in 2001, they took out the 2000 and they replaced it with the word Epcot. And it stayed there for a really long time, and it actually drew a lot of controversy. There were some people who liked it. It's very much like the hat in Hollywood studios. There were people who liked it and a lot of people who didn't like it. I was in the camp of people who didn't like it. I think adding Mickey's hand sort of took away from the theme. Epcot was always supposed to be a little separated from the Disney characters. In any case, it was eventually taken down, and part of the rumor was that it was Siemens found that it didn't fit their corporate image, and it was done right before the anniversary for Epcot's, I want to say its 25th anniversary or its 30th anniversary, one of those two. They took it down, so it now looks just as it did when it opened on opening day. And the ride itself was about 15 to 18 minutes, so you could get a lot of people through there. And it started from prehistoric times, showing man painting on cave walls, or even earlier, it shows them communicating verbally when they're hunting a mammoth. And it goes all the way up until where you see, an unnamed person who's a representation of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Steve Wozniak in a garage building a computer, and everything in between, and just how the world changed through that. And then it sort of poses a question, and this is what makes it, I think, one of my favorite rides. And I'm going back to the Jeremy Irons script here, because there was a line that has always stuck with me since I was a little kid. It poses the question,
but will these seemingly infinite communications become a flood of electronic babble, or will we use this power to usher in a new age of understanding and cooperation on this, our Spaceship Earth?
And I think that's a fantastic question to ask, because I think at the end of the day, there's so much more value in an attraction that not only teaches you about the history of something, but then makes you realize that history is something that everybody's a part of, including you. And we have this responsibility to use this technology that our ancestors for thousands of years have been building upon for the good of humanity, as opposed to just, as Irons puts it, technobabble. And that's what really, no matter how much it changes, I think it will always have a place in my heart as one of my favorite rides. And I think it's an attraction that, in the way it's set up, really represents what Walt Disney was thinking about when he designed the original Epcot, which was going to be a city, which was focusing on the past so enough that we don't forget it, but on the future and where we could go with it, and giving us the sense, the self-realization, so that we use that technology for good. And I think anybody who goes to Epcot, I think it is a must ride. It's not an exciting ride. It might not be something that you'll go on multiple times on a trip, but I think you would be cheating yourself to not ride it if you ever visited Epcot. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a little bit about Spaceship Earth, and I hope to see you all here next week for the next episode of Minecraft Disney. Bye, everyone.